And that's going to replace a facility that's really inadequate for the current recycling that they do at the city facility. So there's a lot of exciting things that are happening in the city's swamp. So the old model is breaking down. The old model is that you pick up the garbage, it's one undifferentiated mass of trash, you bring it to a landfill. Or you have one undifferentiated mass of trash you take to a transfer station, they dump it on the floor, they push it into a tractor trailer, and then that goes out into some other place. And it's the breakdown of this model for economic and political and environmental reasons that's creating these wonderful sustainability opportunities, not just for the companies I represent, but for many of you, for businesses all over the city, and for the city itself. So we're seeing an increase in recyclables, and what we call a different waste streams are being carved out of the usual garbage. The first one is a traditional one, the commingled material. Glass is a problem, as I mentioned, because glass contaminates the rest of the load. You're seeing e-waste become a recyclable. E-waste is electronics waste, all those televisions and digital stuff that we'll carry around. 19 states have now passed laws regulating e-waste. New York City passed a law last year regulating e-waste. That law goes into effect next year, but next year it will be illegal for businesses to put their e-waste in the regular trash. What that means is that a lot of smart people are figuring out, is there a business model where I can create an e-waste collection route and come up with a place to send that material to? And Congress may pass legislation that's going to affect e-waste as well. We've certainly been studying for the last 7 years.
There is a, by the way, I'm sorry for interrupting, but there is already a few points and a few months in New York City and Union Square that you can basically drop all your electronic devices, computers, and other stuff that are useless to you and probably sits in the drawers in the house. So you can go on the EPA website and find the actual dates where there are collecting points.
Absolutely. They have e-waste drop-off dates here in the city and in the surrounding suburbs as well. Plastic bags have become a big emerging issue in the solid waste world. There are people who think that plastic bags are the best example of mindless consumerism, and that if we just get rid of plastic bags, we would be helping to save America. Plastic bags are an infinitesimal, teeny tiny part of the waste stream, but they're politically symbolic. And as with other places, New York City's passed a law that mandates separate plastic bag recycling in certain types of stores, retail stores with more than 5 in the chain or with a certain amount of floor space. And this is something that we're already starting to see companies in my industry start to do plastic bag recycling routes. Now, that takes the plastic bags out of the waste stream, but guess what? You need a separate truck to go in and collect that stuff. So that means more emissions, more noise, more adverse impact on the environment. So it's an interesting balance about whether or not that type of legislation makes a lot of sense. Food waste. New York City, like other municipalities, generates a significant amount of what's food or organic material. And for more than a decade, there have been carters in the city who have food waste routes where they go to restaurant after restaurant, pick up this liquidy, fragrant stuff, and then bring it somewhere to get it composted. They can dump that material for cheaper than they pay for at a transfer station. So it makes economic sense to do that. Does anybody know where there's a commercially available composting facility in New York City?
There isn't one.
There isn't one. That's right. So where do people have to go? They have to go to Central New Jersey or Eastern Long Island, and it becomes expensive and time consuming. So part of what I hope to see happen sometime is for there to be viable commercial composting options here in the city. And another emerging issue that people at my association are beginning to study is the issue of compact fluorescent light bulbs. You know, those good green light bulbs that we want to put into our houses because they'll burn 4 times longer and they're good for the environment. Well, they're very good for the environment, but they have mercury in them. So when they go bad and you throw them in the garbage, it's not good for the guy who works picking up that trash. And it's certainly not good if that stuff goes to the landfill, because then you're going to have mercury in the landfill people don't like to have. So this is an emerging issue in another area where you're starting to see narrow waste streams start happening. So as a result of the swamp, there's going to be less trucks on the road. A lot more garbage is moving out by rail or by barge. In fact, already, all of the waste from Staten Island to Brooklyn goes out of the city by rail. People don't know this. There's a big facility in the Bronx that takes all of the Department of Sanitation material and ships it up to Albany. It crosses the Hudson River just south of Albany, and then it goes down the west side of the Hudson to disposal facilities. It's a crazy routing, but there's no rail bridge over the Hudson River until you get to just south of Albany. Staten Island has a facility that near Fresh Hills that also is taking the material and sending it out by rail. And eventually more material is going to be sent out that way, either by rail or by barge through the 4 marine transfer stations that I mentioned earlier. Now, although there's been a lot of innovation and a lot of good developments over the last few years, there are challenges out there that people in the industry and the city are facing with regard to recycling opportunities. First of all, there's a recession going on. People with capital don't have as much capital to invest in these new investments. And you may not know this, but there was a dramatic decrease in recycling prices in late 2008 that really threw the industry for a loop. And I want to just briefly give you an anecdote about what happens in the recycling business, because it's actually ironic. The last time I spoke in Brooklyn was in November of 2008 at an event somewhat like this. And it was during this tremendous free fall where the value of recyclables was going down every single day. In the early part of 2008, you could collect paper on the streets of New York City and get paid $100 or more a ton at the dock for that paper. That's how valuable that paper was. Why? Because people in the Far East want it. A lot of the paper in the city and other places goes to the Far East, China, India, things like that. When the economic recession took hold in the middle of 2008 here and then the Far East, they literally stopped requesting that material, and the price went off the charts, straight down to the point where in early November, you didn't get $100 a ton for that material anymore. You got nothing for it. Do you think there's any rational economic business model that allows you to collect garbage for a day and then get nothing for that? It costs hundreds of dollars a day to run a garbage truck. Now, fortunately, most of the companies in the solid waste industry were not willing to violate the law. They continue to take the source separated material, dump it in these favorite places, and what we've seen is the price has gone up a little bit over the last 3-4 months. But the day I was speaking in Brooklyn was literally the day that one of the largest recyclers in the city, a company called Sprint Recycling, declared bankruptcy. And so instead of many of my members being at my little presentation, they were out going after Sprint's customers. It's actually ironic. We expected 60 people in the room, and there were 40. There was 20 of the people just didn't show up. So on the train this morning on the way up, I called a couple of my members to find out what the price was today for paper. They get about $50 a ton today. So it's less than half of what it was, but it's a lot better than zero than it was earlier this year. So you have that issue with recyclables. There's also an issue that I touched on earlier. Nobody wants a waste facility in their backyard. You know, NIMBY, not in my backyard. And then there's Banana. It's the new build absolutely nothing, absolutely nowhere, or something like that. You can get the last A right, but you get the point. And even if it's